This is part 2 in our factoring series, and this is kind of just sample problems of how to do the GCF. At this time, I recommend you pause the video, try to find the GCF of each question, and see if you can factor it out on your own first. So at this time, I'm going to go over each problem, starting off with this one. And what we're going to do is look for the GCF of each term, the greatest common factor, the greatest number that divides into each term. And I believe that greatest number is going to be 4. So I'll actually write down my GCF over here is 4. And I'm looking at the variables, and the variables that I see are A. They both share an A, which is good. And I said in the last video that when you're looking for the GCF and you have variables, you always look for the smaller of the two exponents, because that's the most that can divide into each one. So 4a squared will be our GCF. And in parentheses is what we're going to get after we divide each term by the GCF. Because remember, when we're factoring, it's the opposite of multiplying. And you can almost look at factoring out a GCF as if we are undistributing. So when you distribute, you normally take a number on the outside of the parentheses and multiply it to what's on the inside. But because it's backwards, we're given the answer and we're looking for the question. We're actually going to divide, because dividing is opposite of multiplying. So when I divide 8a cubed by 4a squared, I should just get 2a inside the parentheses. Plus, we have an addition sign there, so we keep the addition sign. 20 divided by 4 is 5, and a squared divided by a squared cancel out. So this gets us our answer. So that's the first example factor. And here's a little trick as well. If you want to check your answer to see if it's right, distribute this back in. Once you distribute this 4a squared back in, you should get your original question, because it's just backwards of multiplying. So for the next one, the GCF of these two terms, well, this one does not have a coefficient at all, so we assume the GCF is 1. You can put a 1, but it's really not necessary. I'm looking at the variables they have in common. They each have an x in common, and the smallest exponent I see is 3. So our GCF is x to the third or 1x to the third. We really don't need the 1 there, so I just erase that. So now our goal is to figure out what's inside those parentheses, and we're going to divide each term by x cubed in order to figure that out, because remember, this is the opposite of multiplying, so we're going to divide. A common mistake I see here with a lot of students is I see a lot of people canceling these out and getting 0. But that's not the case. In multiplication or division, when you cancel out, when you're dividing, you actually get 1 as your answer. So x cubed divided by x cubed should be 1. We're subtracting. We have 4 divided by, we don't have a number here, we assume it's 1, so that gives us 4. And x to the fourth divided by x to the third, we subtract our exponents when we divide, and that gives us just x, or x to the first. Again, if you want to check your answer, you can distribute that x cubed back into the set of parentheses, just like this right in here. And you can do that to figure out if you got the same answer, and if you did, then you did a great job. You did the problem correctly. Moving on to this next problem real quick. I don't want to make a video that's too long. Our GCF is 9. They both share a 9, which makes it a little bit tricky here, but we're going to be okay. They do not share a common variable. One has a variable and one does not, so 9 is the GCF. So because this does not have a c at all, there is no variable in our GCF. So we're going to divide each term by our GCF, which is 9. That's easy enough. 9 divided by 9 is 1. That leaves us with a c squared plus 1, and that's our final answer. Our next video, we're going to have 3 more examples, but they're going to be much more challenging. We're still going to find the GCF before we move on to the next part of factoring.